In touch with us, 22422, our SMS line, and if you're online, please use the hashtag Opinion Court so that we can track your conversation. We are discussing the budget this evening, and I will reintroduce my guests to you. To our far right is Edward Kisiangani, our resident political analyst. He'll be telling us whether this was a play for votes in August. Next to him is John Courier, Associate Director at Deloitte East Africa, and to my left, Michael Burugu, partner at PKF. You're all welcome to the program. So let's start with the obvious. What do you think of the budget, Prof? Is it a political one, as we've seen the opposition claim? Is it meant to endear voters? What do you think?
This is an annual ritual. I want to be honest with you. This budget that was read today is actually a narrative, a fine narrative on how the political class can use political trickery, inject political trickery in financial economic management to retain power.
What was the trickery?
The trickery is you look at the areas they targeted. People over 70 years will get money in January, stipend. You are telling them, vote for us. If you don't vote for us, we shall not, you will not get the, if another person takes power in January, you will not get the money. You get the voters on your side, hopefully. There is also the target on question of trying to create jobs within the economy. People have been complaining there's massive unemployment. You promise them you are going to create jobs, and then they believe you. So the trickery is on the details of the number of people who are targeted for jobs, for support. Many people have been targeted in this budget, and all they are saying is that, look, vote for us, we'll do that.
But at the end of the day, don't you want to see more social protection?
But the most important thing, which is a bit comical, is the fact that you have a declaration that for 4 months the price of unga, baking unga and maize meal will come down. So 4 months from now is August. So vote for us, and then we are going to
But there's a drought, Prof. What did you expect?
I mean, this drought, and this country doesn't surprises me. Egypt doesn't have rain almost throughout the year, and they have been supporting us. The problem is not drought. The problem is bad financial management. This is not a problem in this country.
But if they hadn't put in this intervention at this time, given the prevailing weather conditions, you'd still be complaining, right?
No, I think we have had 4 years. We thought there would be measures in place to change from rain-fed agriculture to something else that we can produce, but they have not done very well. And so even the most disappointing thing, so as they were doing this, I thought the minister also disappointed me on the fact that his budget deficit would have been more, which he says he will source from foreign countries, had he factored in the issue of corruption. Because a lot of this money he's talking about will be stolen anyway. So why did he not factor in the money that will be stolen in the budget for corruption?
Money for stealing.
The money will be stolen. But the point is,
John, rescue this conversation.
This is about handing budget.
What do you think? Do you think it was a very political budget, or do you agree with the CS? He was on the program earlier, and he said, look, the first 3 years we had to do what we had to do. It had to be about the macro and the very aggressive kind of fiscal approach. But now we can actually turn our focus to the micro, to the Kadogo economy, if you like. And it's just a coincidence that, the election is in August.
Yeah.
Doing this.
Certain elements I agree with Prof, because I see it as a balancing act. This is an election year. So certain things have been handed out to in the budget to sort of remind the voters that please vote for us. So I feel it's a balancing act. You look at the bands have been expanded in second year running, though the effects taken from January next year for this additional 10%. But however, I see it as a balancing act.
Right.
They're still looking at the manufacturing sector, again trying to further cushion what they have been doing in the earlier years. So I feel that more or less it was a balancing act. It's really an election budget.
All right. Yeah. Your thoughts?
Yeah, how I wish Prof one time became the CS National Treasurer, because then I think, you know, according to him, you know, Professor naturally had, you know, complicated people in my view. Because the way I see it, and as you say, there's drought. It's only a coincidence that this drought and famine happen to come at the same time when we have elections. So for me, I think I didn't see really election undertones in this budget, because for the first time, I think in the last 4 years, CS Rotich, you know, has been graduating, and I think today he got a PhD, if you ask me, because he focused on very specific measures that are targeted at creating jobs. The only thing that I would have liked to see is when you talk of incentives that you know, will, you know, spur manufacturing, he didn't talk about the market, which is Kenya's biggest market for the longest time. It's been Uganda. That market today is funded with cheap stuff from China. Same thing with our market, same thing with Tanzania. I didn't see any effort at the regional level as an economic bloc where he's talking about protecting and creating a market that then is going to drive the manufacturing that he's talking about. I think that was the shortfall in my view, but generally it's a good budget. It's unfortunate that people will read directions into it, but I think we have a famine, we have a budget. You've seen what's happening in Baringo earlier on in your show, and I think that something got to be done. If you have to bring in maize and just remove the duty to save the people who are dying, you've got to do it. The political issues are signed.
All right, let me come to you, John, because this whole push on social protection, it's arguable as to whether it will actually cushion Kenyans from the effects of inflation. What do you think? Was it aggressive enough?
No, it wasn't aggressive enough. It's a good measure, but I think more could have been done. It's 12 years since the last revision of the income tax bans was done. So I think it should have been a little bit more aggressive, just to ensure that it cushions us from that. And again, the last 1 year or so, we've seen inflation has been increasing. We don't know now with you know, BRITEX and other macroeconomic aspects that are beyond our borders. With the effect of that, we don't know whether you know, we'll be able to hold the inflation rate steady. But I would have expected it to be a little bit more aggressive.
There was the issue of the gaming industry, which is heavily penalized, profits of the 50%, and you remember that Jacob Midio in Parliament had tried to bring in measures to regulate or put brakes on this industry. You think this is the executive's back way of dealing with the same issue?
It is part of the political trickery I was talking about.
It's all a scheme.
It's a scheme. You see, parents in this country have they know, the government knows that parents in this country have a lot of influence over their children. So what that measure means is you appeal to the softer side of the parents, that this government is interested in protecting children. So this betting is bad. Then parents can tell children that actually this government cares about you, so you vote for them. This is part of the political trickery. But even when you come to this tokenism that we are seeing now, you look at the issue of manufacturing, and where we have said they want to promote manufacturing by, you know, lowering taxes so that people can start motor vehicle assemblies here. You know what? This Kenyan economy is run by the Mtumba industry. Most people drive Mtumba vehicles. 95% of that is what runs the Kenyan economy. So do you invest in something that realistically runs the economy, or you want people to assemble vehicles at Toyota Kenya or General Motors, which in fact 3/4 of the people who are in business cannot buy? What sort of economics is that? So you try to say, yeah,
but they want to make cheaper cars, they want to create employment, and cheap? I think I heard the argument of the dignity of Kenyans having new things.
How cheap? How cheap? Even if they removed the zero rated these vehicles, the Volkswagen in Thika, they are unaffordable by most of the people who drive on our Kenyan roads. So instead of going to talk about the incentives, say, even with these incentives, how many people will afford, how many jobs are we going to create? That makes economic sense, which the minister does not highlight. So this populism is supposed to appeal to short-term emotions that the people have, that within the next 4 months of being conned into this thinking, they will have voted, they will have voted in a particular way. So there's totally nothing. So the betting industry, you can see, if I were the minister, what they should have done, and with regard to betting, was to just declare that the betting in Kenya is banned. If you take 50% of what people are making,
but it's raking in billions.
Yes,
Who's going to turn them down those billions realistically?
You know, most of this betting is online.
Yeah.
You have also to ask the technical aspects of the online betting, how they will get money through online betting. Most of this betting is not even confined here. Even if you are saying they can try to control the signals, if you are betting about Manchester United playing Chelsea, how do you directly get that money? Because some of the betting companies that control this don't live in this country. So the online thing is going to be a big challenge to the minister when it comes to betting.
What do you think about the betting?
Well, perhaps to some extent I do agree with Prof that what the minister needed to do actually, in my view, was one, to either ban betting or to have very stringent measures to regulate the industry, because betting is actually not an economic activity. So when you want to tax 50% of an activity that is taking money from the left side and putting on the right side, actually you lose the point. And I think you know, globally, if you go to UK for example, betting does happen, but on restricted timelines. You know, it is restricted. There are very strict guidelines on how it happens. Many countries it's banned. In all the Arab countries or the Muslim countries, it's illegal to bet. And you know, it's going naturally to tear into our social fabric, because who is betting in this country? It's not Prof here, it's not Korea here. It's actually people in the slums. It's the same people who want the prices of hunger and bread to go down. And I think that those people, if not guided, then they end up in a very desperate situation. You have people who are putting everything that they earn into betting. So I think, in my view, what the CS needed to do was to have a bold move to, you know, take up the Jacobo Midigo recommendations. But I think it was wrong to just target the tax that is coming out of this money, because what you are doing as a country, you are taxing an non-existent economic activity. It doesn't exist. It's just getting money from one side and putting on the other side.
It's actually like a sin tax. So what you're actually doing is, and you're directing it towards, you know, culture, youth, you know, but there's no, you cannot see the other side to see that that money is actually being implemented to effectively control. Because like Mbrugu is saying, what you really need to do is to control that aspect that is causing people to go and gamble. The quick,
we must move on.
It's not an economic activity.
It's not an economic activity, so syntax. Fair enough. But hey, we put syntaxes on alcohol as well, etc. But let's move on to the question of the EACC. It's one of the institutions where we saw, you know, receive additional funding, Prof, to fight corruption. Does it take more money to fight corruption?
No. The problem of EACC has never been enough money. It is the lack of goodwill to do the job well. People don't need a lot of money. They even know who has been stealing from us. But it became a clearing house for people who steal money. And you can even see the desperation that the IEBC has been going through, to the point that now even the candidates for the August elections now will be cleared in places like the Ministry of Education, because EACC is basically an organization that cannot account for the money that the public has been giving it. Now the argument always is that if you give us more money, we shall do what? We shall increase our performance. But when you give them more money, maybe those who have been controlling cartels related to EACC will now ask for more money for the people involved in corruption. So again, we get it wrong. The way we are supposed to do is to ask, what are the loopholes that make people walk away corruption? This is a decision that the whole nation must make, that we don't want to condone corruption, and it must be dealt with by people who are in authority. Give them power to take action. They don't need money to take somebody to court. They just need the investigation.
Okay, John, let me come to you and ask you about the fact that this is also one of those budgets that was seen to be important to the administration in terms of allowing it to complete its project. So we saw, especially in education, a lot of investment for the laptops, free primary and secondary exam waivers, right, in roads and other infrastructure, SGR, you know, phase 2, electricity, etc. Does this budget then mean that we will see the Jubilee administration actually do what it promised in its campaign pledges, but perhaps at a much higher cost than we expected?
Yeah, in fact, what we have seen is escalations of costs. We've seen the laptop project, which has not really kicked off, but we see allocations every year. So we're still waiting to see that really take root and the benefit being felt, you know, by the class 1 students as was meant. So I feel that yes, indeed, these allocations are going in. Look at the irrigation project, that massive amounts were spent, but we still haven't seen the impact of that. So I think there's still a lot needs to be done, and therefore we are seeing the cost just escalating. So there could be an element, a mix of both. The fact that they want to make sure that the pledges that they pledged actually come to fruition. However, we are just seeing the costs increasing in some elements.
But also, and the reason why we are you are asking this very important question, but the reason why we are in this kind of mess goes back to the way we have structured this economy. I've been talking about this point because this economy is badly structured. We reward the wrong sectors. The wrong sectors. In fact, consumers. If you look at the people, ESCC, Parliament, it have been given money. Now, if you look at the budget for recurrent expenditure, which is salaries and allowances for people to enjoy themselves in the hotels and other places, this money can go to infrastructure. Look, infrastructure is 600, if you put together roughly about 600 billion shillings. But the recurrent expenditure, much of this money is wasted money. It is not doing anything to our economy. It's about 1 trillion. Now, that is already misplaced. So, Jubilee and its president, the CS, is going to tax people to give a whopping 1 trillion shillings to useless things. So I would have been happy if...
all civil servants must be up in arms now. Come on.
Yes, they did let me tell you, I would have been happy if now, for example, this budget was reading that all infrastructure is going to take 1 trillion. And then the recurrent expenditure is 500 billion. I would be happy about that.
Let's find out. How do we walk out of this mess that we're in?
Yeah, it's a huge mess, and it's a mess that I see in our constitution, because reason we have a huge labor force, we have 47 county governments. You have you know, MCAs created by the constitution, close to 3,000 of them. You've got about perhaps almost 400 members of parliament. You've got too many senators, women reps, and all that kind. So I don't think really it's a problem of Jubilee government. It's a problem of Kenyans. We chose this constitution ourselves. And I think when Prof is talking about recurrent expenditure, this is money going to purely pay taxes and to support the system. I mean, to pay salaries. And I think it's a constitutional issue. And as Kenyans, we've got to ask the questions whether we are operating under the right constitutional framework, because you've got all these offices created under the constitution.
You know, my brother,
right?
You as an economist,
right? You
are supposed to look at how best we can optimum use of resources. That is your job.
Yes.
And then when you look at optimum resources, where are the leakages? One of the things that we have a complaint about, especially with the Jubilee administration with regards to government, is the fact that they tried to compete with county governments to duplicate positions, administrative positions which would have easily been done through an act of parliament, power delegated to you have a ward representative, for example, and a chief. Why would the national government pay salary? In one case,
the civil service must be trained.
Yes. You know, and what I'm saying, that's correct. But on one hand, you give 15% of the national budget to the counties to pay a ward rep. The same money from the same source, from the national government, it comes to pay the chief. The government was so nervous about this devolution. So if we try to look at these leakages and reduce the number of people that should be working in particular positions and the duplicate ends, you can imagine after 1 year we shall have saved a lot of money. So it's not a constitutional requirement that we do this. There are certain things which have been done not right. If you look at the first schedule to fifth schedule, certain things are being duplicated at national level and at the county level. Okay. And that is not what the constitution says.
And perhaps, Prof, what you are forgetting is that the reason of this duplication is because you have the wrong structure in the first place. If you had the right structure, then you don't give anybody, whether Jubilee or NASA government, you don't give anybody a chance to duplicate. And, you know, what is the saving? I mean, what's the saving point for Kenyans? Is to have the right structure so that you don't give anybody a chance to do this kind of duplication. Inevitably, I think Kenya has got to deal with that issue, because that is the problem. That's the real problem. And when you're spending about 60% of your budget in paying salaries and financing movement, cars and drivers and secretaries in offices and all that.
Yes.
Obviously, it does affect the economy because you are then putting very little to infrastructure projects which is supposed to create
and at the same
employment.
time, this public service, government
Yeah.
is the largest employer. So if you're talking about trimming it, where are these people going? Can the economy absorb them?
But you see, one of the things that
Yeah.
would have been done in what my brother is saying, the restructure that would have been done when county governments were being established, they should first of all have shared staff that was already pre-existing at the national level before new employment was done. At policy level, this should have been done. But what happened is, even some of the people who were seconded to the counties at the national level were chased away in some counties. And then the counties started employing their own people without a proper policy. And most of the money in counties is being spent on what? Paying salaries and allowances. And then you saw, of course, the national government and the National Assembly, especially Senate, was supposed to regulate affairs within the counties. It didn't. What some of the things that are happening, especially with governors creating posts which don't exist, creating trips, so many trips abroad, and spending public resources can't be stopped by senators. What has Senate done to do that? That's where we waste money.
John.
I think, just without belaboring the point, I think also that we can also have a government that employs a large civil service, but we need to see something, a return from that civil service. And that, I think, is what is lacking. There are some governments, there are some countries traditionally where you find the civil service is the best employer. And people actually, there's a competition between the government and the private sector.
Right.
Economies like Australia, like that, you find that
things are working.
things work.
Right.
So what we do not see is that like SGR is a good project. I think it's a magnificent project. But are they going to be able to implement what they actually dreamed about? So we need that correlation needs at some point to be to be laid bare.
Okay. John, I want to come to you with a final comment on the last 4 years of this administration and its fiscal management. How would you describe the way in which the Jubilee administration has spent the people's money? I'll start with you.
Well, perhaps I would say on a few flagship projects, the SGR, the roads, a bit of it, the RAPSET project is happening, is money that has been put into the right use. Where I think they have really failed, if you compare this administration with the Kibaki administration, is to create a proper real economic activity. When you talk about markets, when Kibaki was president and Jakaya Kikwete was president, you saw East Africa community almost coming together, creating some sensible infrastructure to make sure you create a market. So you can create all these activities around manufacturing, agriculture, agribusiness and all that. But if you do not have a market, then you are lost, especially in the face of what is happening now in America, in China. You see, everybody is becoming a protective kind of economy. So you've got to create your own market. And without a market, it doesn't matter how much incentives you give, you'll have nowhere to market your stuff. So I think to a large extent, money has been put into the right use, but there has not been long-term plans on how to sustain the economic growth.
All right. John.
I think my triggers for whether the right thing has been done or not is you've got good brains sitting in all the ministries. Like I would pick an example, EPZ, we saw a lot of flurry just the other day where they're showcasing some of the best things that are actually being manufactured in Kenya. But we are actually that is not trickling down. We cannot see a real spur. You need to have incentives that are really going to spur the economy. Roads are good, but if all you're putting there are cars that we are importing every day, then that's not going to spur the economy. You need something real happening in those places that you're opening up. And we can
like
industries. We need to start. Actually, that value addition that happens to the tea needs to start happening here. We were looking at our potato industry. We need to see that actually happening in the center where the manufacturing is happening. The railroads actually leading into that center. So something needs to be done. A proper trigger needs to come in, and I think that's what is really lacking.
Okay, Prof, the last 4 years, how's your money been spent?
Very badly. In fact, our money actually has been misused. And you see, there are many things you can quote about the administration. And why money has been misused is that a lot of people who have had to misuse our money have not been put to account. So what we lack, whichever way you look at it, across the board, is the accountability. Maybe time has come when everybody in this country should go on the streets like it was in Romania a few months ago, regardless of their political affiliation, and they tell everybody, including the president and the parliament, on both sides, and then he says, we are fed up with corruption. This is a budget of 2.6 trillion. You will find that probably only 20% of that budget will work. In fact, it's on record by the Auditor General. The first month of devolution, only 20% of that budget probably worked.
Right.
So my thinking is that we have had our money stolen. For a change, whoever wins the elections in August, we want a budget that works, and we want a budget where we use money that everybody can account for the actions and the way they deploy our resources.
And I thank you all for your views. To my right, John Kuria, Associate Director, Deloitte EA, and Michael Mburugo, Partner, PKF. Prof, as always, we're taking a break. I'm back with the sport after this.